Shall we
I am.
rise for the pitch? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here.
Vice President Kennedy. Trustee Clements.
Here.
Trustee Schwartz.
Here.
Trustee Carr.
Okay. Okay, so we're starting today at 6 o'clock to address our board goals and board workshop topics. We are inviting the public in to witness that because that's part of what we do, but we'll be much more kind of engaged with each other, not as forward-facing as usual, so don't take offense to that. I think that Diana made some copies for us to kind of start the conversation with our board goals from last year, which are also on our website, as well as some, let me actually just say one, workshop topics that we've kind of started putting on a list. So hand that to Evan. Should be one more goals. Do you have one more goals?
I do.
Just want to give that to Evan.
Margaret.
Oh, great. I think that. Did you get them? Okay.
Yes, that's Margaret.
All right. So I don't know. I thought maybe a good way to start would be to look at the goals from last year and kind of see which of those goals we want to keep, we want to amend, and then either along the way or secondary, we can kind of see how it goes. We can talk about additional thoughts that we have for other things. So the first goal was supporting the transition of the new superintendent. So obviously that one isn't exactly something we need to keep. But we talked about, we do have a lot of like administrative shifts going on this year. So we did talk about finding ways to support the changes, what's going on at the elementary middle school, our new director of PPS, our new athletic director. So I'm not sure, that one to me is kind of sounding like maybe it could morph a little bit into supporting the transition of our new administrative makeup. I don't know what you guys are thinking about that.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we certainly want to do what we can to support the new people in their new roles, but it's not really an action of the board to engage with individual personnel on that level. It's so yes, of course we support them, and if there's anything that we can do to help, I think we will. But I don't know that there's a whole lot of concrete steps that the board can necessarily take, or perhaps there are.
The interim roles of the elementary and middle school principals, as well as the PPS director, kind of require our check-in and our oversight, right?
So maybe.
I'm not an interim person.
We're not.
No, thank you, Brent. No, I just mean the change up of the switching elementary and middle school to be separate, restructuring, to be separate roles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point about those interim positions, because it will be up to us at the end of the the preliminary period to make the evaluation as to where we go from here. So we do need to be involved at that level.
Okay, so sounds like that's on the agenda. We'll keep going and see if other things
Any
pop
type
in.
of training any type of training, or we talked about bringing in mentoring, and that all goes through board approval. So that's all would fall under the realm of the support.
Right, professional development. We talked about bringing in somebody to assist the director of PPS
Right,
and the
so-
transition.
Right.
Yeah,
So
and
that
that's actually already happening at this point.
right.
So,
Okay.
I mean, what will happen as far as personnel? The board is the body that will approve the continuation or moving into a tenure track position. And we, within the district, will coordinate the activities and then make the recommendation. So I'm not sure how you want to include that as part, as the role of the board in relationship to the role of the district. And that probably should be considered in the goal as well.
Okay. And we'll do some like wording as like a draft number 2, but yeah, go ahead,
The issue
Peggy.
is that to make the elementary school and middle school principalships permanent separate positions, that is a decision that we need to make. So it is a situation that we would want to monitor, and I think what Peter was saying, that it's Diana's role is to support them, and then our job is to support Diana. I don't know how you would word that, but that's right, because that's Diana's domain, and then you know, as it should be. So to something along the lines of supporting the superintendent, and you know, being in communication with her about how it's going, so that we can make a well-informed decision at the end of the school year.
Well, probably more of the spring, it would be
In the
a
spring,
recommendation
right?
that
Before
would come.
because it has to happen before.
Before the budget.
Yeah,
That's what
it's-
we would like
that's
to do,
right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
That to me sounds like
Yeah.
a good approach.
Because it's not our job
Yeah.
to support, it's our job to support Diana as she supports them, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Supporting the sport.
Supporting support. Lots of scaffolding.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to kind of keep going. We might circle back. Adopt a new district-wide strategic plan. Obviously, we've adopted one, but we were talking about supporting the implementation of the strategic plan, and that's, you know, that's kind of part and parcel with the structuring, the reorganization support as well. You know, that's all part of the same equation, but we are talking about professional development that we're supporting, the new tech network that we're supporting.
This actually sounds like a good candidate for a workshop topic later on in the year, a progress report on how we're
Yes.
doing with implementing
Yeah, I
the
agree
goals
with
of the plan.
Yep,
I agree.
yep. I'll put that on the
And
workshop
actually,
list.
what I plan to do is on a monthly basis, kind of sharing the update, but I think that what we're probably looking at doing is spending a time to really dig in and to see where we are. And I can tell you that right now we are at the beginning of all the conversations, and maybe we want to do something where there's a check-in, and this can be when we get to the topics, a check-in mid-year, and then kind of an overview at the end of the year of where we've developed.
Because one of the things I remember when we were, I think, talking about this, I don't know when, but that one of the things that was going to happen in the professional development days before the school year started was that the faculty and the administration were collectively going to make decisions about an action plan. And so knowing what that would, and maybe that's actually going to come through like the administrator's reports, or maybe that will come through your report, but certainly knowing, I mean, in terms of knowing, having a mid-year review and an end-of-year review to know sort of what to be looking for, I think it would be very helpful to have a clear articulation of sort of what those steps, what the plan is, what the goals are, right?
Yeah,
What the-
definitely, because there's
'Cause
many years of work
It's
in
many
fully
years,
implementing
right.
all of the goals in
Right,
the
yeah.
strategic plan. So at this point, you and the administrative team and the staff must have formulated some kind of an idea of what's manageable this year, what you hope to achieve this year. And so if you can give us that list of what your goals are for this year, and then we can have those check-ins that we're
Right.
talking about.
And to
yeah,
make
actually-
sure that it doesn't go on the shelf. I think that happens a lot with plans, is that you spend all this time making the plan, and then it gets put on a shelf somewhere. But making sure that it's staying as this living, breathing thing that we constantly are checking in with.
And you will actually get your first snapshot of the plan, the implementation plan tonight. And when, when Leah and Simon present, they're going to present the work of, that they did in Chicago with the new tech network, the work that we did at our administrative retreat on how we would integrate, and the kind of like a 5-year overview of how it would be rolled out with all the faculty, and what different groups would be at what different place each year. And so that will come to you tonight. So you will have an actual diagram that outlines the 5 different years. But that's only part of it. That's kind of like the first step, and that's probably what you will hear most about this year. The other piece is we're going to have to figure out how we're going to implement our individualized plan for kids, and how we're going to look at that and where it's going to come from. And right now there's so many different potentials out there. We have to make sure that we choose the one that works best for us. So
The student learning profiles.
yes. And so we have to look at, there are many different machinations of like the beginning steps of that, which are really very interesting. If you do a Google search on some of the new learning plans, there are a number to choose from. So we're going to be working with that as well.
So it sounds like there's a lot of updating that needs to happen for the strategic plan, and I know it should be an ongoing workshop topic or progress report topic, but I still think it should be one of our goals too, to make sure that we're staying on top of it. I feel like it's so important.
So to the extent, so what I just heard Diana say was that that where the administrators and the faculty had made a decision to really focus their efforts this year were around the technology piece. So and I actually can't have too many, I need too many documents open at once. But that, as well as the learner profile. So the extent to which I don't know, I'm not very good at stating goals, but to articulate a goal that is to follow the progress, to again,
Hold the administration accountable for the progress, stay updated on it, and support it.
For those 2 pieces, if those are the 2 pieces that you all decided, because I mean, not only does it give a real the specificity, not only I think helps us do our job in supporting that, but it also sort of holds us accountable to make sure that we're doing that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was acknowledged repeatedly throughout the strategic planning process was that it is an ambitious plan and it is multiple years of work, and to get to that point, being really clear of what the steps are, right? Because you have very clear steps, and making sure that we can be a part of.
So everything that's on this year's punch list should be either measurable or observable. And I think that's what we need to keep our finger on. We need to, how's the implementation of this goal that you stated at the beginning of the year going? Yep. Have you run into any difficulties? Is it, what was missing? Because I'm quite sure that we didn't catch everything first time around. And we fully expect that we'll be adding and subtracting as we go.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I know at one point Diane and I early on had a conversation, and I was like, well, I like data. I like being able to measure things, and Diana made a really good point that not everything is really quantifiable in that sort of numbers crunching way. But I think along with the lines of what you said, things are observable. I mean, there are qualitative and quantitative observations that we can make, and so that we can know ourselves and communicate to the community about the progress that we're making on this really important set of topics.
But I also think it's important for the qualitative measures,
yes,
to have an idea of what we're going to be looking for.
Exactly.
And so in some cases it'll be quantitative, in some cases it'll be qualitative. What you'll see is the initial plan for the beginning of the rollout process, and learning about the different stages. There'll be a planning year, there'll be implementation year, and then the next phase will come in, and so you'll see a rolling implementation of things that will happen that are, and there's a comfort level in kind of knowing when different parts of, or different grade levels or different departments kind of roll into it, And I'm sorry, I keep not looking at you, so
No,
I
it's okay.
apologize. So I think that's part of it. But then what are we looking for from the students? What do we want to make sure that we are seeing, and how are we going to ask them for their focus and their beliefs and what's changing within the district?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it was obvious when we saw a video at some point last year, in a video of one of the projects that was going on. It's not that you always need the numbers and scores, you know, just seeing a video of what was going on in I forget which which PBL unit it was, but it just made it so clear to everybody that, oh yeah, this stuff is special and something really important is happening here.
Right.
So it's not always about having a test score or having a number.
Exactly.
It's also just about looking at the whole picture, and we get that.
And maybe we can task our student representatives with updating us as well on how's activity in the classroom changing this year based on these new initiatives. Do you like it? Is it helping your education?
Yeah, that's a good point, Peter.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to keep the strategic plan implementation as part of our goal set.
And
Yeah.
also look at, I would put in there some kind of qualitative and quantitative measures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I mean, that was something that I had down as far as goals, and which is like a /, workshop, as far as maybe more emphasis on, not more emphasis, but, well, more emphasis on data, in the sense of, like, we don't really look at data that much as a board, as far as, you know, like I know it's been the last couple of years have been crazy trying to compare from one year to another. You know, the math and reading scores, level 3s, level 4s, how many are there? What's the goal for next year? What % increase are we looking at? We don't really discuss those types of numbers. And, you know, and that kind of goes into what you're talking about with the measurements, but, you know, that would be a good workshop topic, you know, to just flat out, like, this was our scores last year, and our goal next year is going to be X % increase, you know, and you can even go as far as, you know, on the high school level with Regent scores and so forth, as far as how many students got over this grade, and, you know, how many got over 75 on the now it's 75 over on the English and the math. So what percentage were last year? What percentage is our goal for next year? Something along those lines.
Yeah, and we'd have to look at multiple measures, because
Yeah.
a lot of what we're going to be looking at in our new strategic plan isn't focused on test scores, or isn't focused on improving test scores. It's focused on improving student knowledge and integration and some of the soft skills that is very important that we develop for our 21st century graduates and the graduate of 2024. And, you know, our belief is that when we teach this, the test scores are going to you know, help themselves.
Right.
But, you know, we continue to have very strong test scores, but we also don't want to become a test-driven district. And if anything, some of the new practices that you'll be seeing are probably moving away from that kind of test focus. So I think we'd have to look at multiple measures there.
Right.
And I'm not
And,
sure.
and I'm not even saying that should drive it, and I agree, because where I work, it's way too driven. Okay, I'm just saying, like, it's out there, it's public information. If somebody wanted to go and find out what the 5th graders at Haldane do for reading and math, they're going to go, and it's public information. So we as a board need to be aware of that public information.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, and also, I mean, I guess it depends what happens with the, if parents continue to choose to keep their children home on days that test scores happen. And I think one of the things we noted this year was that it can, the numbers can then almost become misleading in a way, or at least confusing, or telling a partial picture. And so I mean, I completely agree with Diana that we don't want to be a test score driven district, and that there's a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish that are not captured by the scores, but to the extent that they are out there and people look at them, for us to have an understanding of what does it mean, and not just, I mean, percentages of meeting those standards, but, you know, our kids, making sure kids are, almost more important to me is, are there some children, how are we helping especially the children who may not be meeting those standards?
Well, it's certainly
So
something
I-
we can't ignore. I mean, I feel like we, as a board, have done exactly what Diana has said, and we've made an effort to not focus on the test scores, right?
absolutely.
But we can't ignore them. I mean, they are a part of the equation, and they're an important part of the equation, and everybody works really hard to make them as high as possible, and they are information. So it might be a good workshop topic, right? To just get a little bit more information for us, as well as the public, on how to interpret the test scores, what they mean, what they don't mean. You know,
when you look at the numbers out of context, you can
Make
glean
anything
the
up.
wrong kind of information.
right.
So
I mean, I remember having a conversation a long time ago with Julia about the fact that, you know, and this was before the switch to the Common Core, but that there was also a way, I mean, even to understand, what I remember Julia saying, and she should correct me if I'm wrong, was that they felt
sure she
like
will.
that she, and I actually think this was before Brent came, that she and Maggie had made as much sense of the test scores as they could, that they felt like that there was a finite amount of information to withdraw from the test scores, and that they had withdrawn that, and there was a need and a desire possibly for something more. So even for us to understand what is the process that the administrators go through, what have they seen, where are those data lacking, is there a need for other kinds of data? You know, one of the things I think that the Common Core assessment effort, failed as it may be, had set out to do was to create resources for formative assessment, which feeds very much into what we're trying to accomplish. Are there types of formative assessment data that we may want to have access to? And so the data is important. We want to not use just test scores, but we do want to use data to hold ourselves and each other accountable. Right. But to be able to do that, we actually really need to understand what's the current state of affairs, and are there places that we need to be going? Because there's no doubt about it that the state standardized test scores are, I personally don't think they're invaluable, but they are limited instruments, you know.
And I think it's important just for parents to understand the fact that the cut scores have changed dramatically over the last 3 to 4 years. And from year to year, we're not measuring apples and apples, we're measuring apples and oranges.
Well, and what does it mean if it, I mean, one of the things that's, in a district that's this small, and with the test changings that they are, you can, I would guess, I'm not an expert, but I would guess you could have pretty big shifts in scores, and they're not necessarily something to be overexcited about or over worried about. But like you all said, there's a lot I don't know about New York State test scores.
Right. And then also considering other measures to use and make it kind of a dossier of different things that you want to look at for the understanding of the implementation and the success of the implementation.
Well, but one of the things, I mean, and I think I have a limited understanding of what the learner profiles, what the goal is for them to be, but, you know, my understanding is that part of that will be some kind of assessment about different aspects of students' social emotional growth and well-being. So I don't know if that's the case, but that it could be in terms of motivation or interests or, you know, aspirations or, you know, and understanding. I assume data will play a role in those, and making sure that we have our understanding is developing as that moves forward.
Yep, good. Okay, so test scores on the workshop topic list. Okay, so I'm going to keep going down our list here. Tell the Haldane story was a goal from last year. That's the one that is starting to form a little bit differently, I think. That's the one we kind of didn't spend much time on last year. But I'm kind of feeling like this could morph a little bit into, you know, we've talked a lot about how do we communicate with the public? A website, we've talked about redesigning the website several times.
Well, I think we fully expect that this is the year of the website redesign.
Yes.
So
Say
I
it again,
think,
Peter. Say it again.
Say it loud.
This is the year
Yeah.
of the website redesign.
It is.
So there is a very easily measurable goal.
Yes.
Uh,
And so I'm kind of feeling like maybe this third goal could be more about communication with the public, about making sure that we're being, ways of being as transparent as possible as a board, inviting the community in. I think we learned a lot this summer about what the community wants from us in terms of information, in terms of a seat at the table for big decisions, and so I'm wondering how we can work into a goal that supports all of that. And we talked about the website redesign. We've talked about board docs being more available at curriculum nights. We've talked about this community leaders group. So I'm wondering if we can kind of weave a goal about communication to the public.
Yeah, we want to demonstrate a commitment to, because we learned a lot this summer. I think we have to reflect on what took place this summer and learn from it and make it, and I think ultimately it had a positive end. But it's that commitment to transparency, community involvement, effective communication. We've done our best, but I think that there's more that we can do in that area if we identify it as something we would like to see as an area of improvement.
And I think that other things we've talked about, like the student representatives being more involved, I feel like that would kind of fall under this realm as well. Also communicating with the student population, not just the adults, but getting them as part of this conversation. So I feel like that could kind of also get weaved into here as well in terms of just another group of people to communicate with.
Yeah, and there was that suggestion that popped up earlier about the possibility of having a student board member.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily in support of doing it now, but I think we could take steps this year by engaging with the student representatives and tasking them with specific things to come and tell us about. That it might be a sequence that might ultimately end up with us having a student board member, but I think we need to take that as a sort of slow progression.
But just to clarify, it wouldn't be a board it would be a non-vote, I mean, just because it's a non-voting,
Yes.
it's a non-voting,
Yes.
they're not in executive session.
Correct.
Privy to executive session type
Right.
of information.
Right.
Right. But and if we were to go that route, it would be a full-on voting. It's a big deal. You have to actually have a vote and everything.
A public
A
vote.
public
Yeah,
vote.
add that position.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because
Yeah.
not everybody has the same context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is definitely not anything like a voter-elected
Right.
board member.
Right.
But it's a student who has a seat at the table,
Student,
a
exactly,
voice. It's a
yes.
voice of the student body at the table.
And we were talking about trying to task our student representatives with specific things, up until now, and it's something we want to talk with the administrators about, but up until now, they've kind of just come in and presented what was interesting to them that month.
Right.
And we were talking about maybe tasking them with something like, okay, our workshop topic is drug prevention and how it's going. So let's ask the board member, the student reps to talk about specific things like, oh, did you see this movie? What did you think about it? Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's sounding like goal 3 might be something close to communication to the public, work that a little bit. And then, go ahead.
Sorry, communication. But really what you're saying, it's not communication to the public, it's really creating protocols, pathways, opportunities for the back and forth.
Exactly.
In
It's creating an
productive-
open channel.
In productive ways,
Yes,
in constructive
absolutely,
ways.
Absolutely.
And I think the community leaders group
It's a big,
will be, the focal point of that.
Yes, agreed.
I think one thing we did learn this summer, and you pointed this out, Jen, is that if people want to get in touch with us and communicate their feelings to us, then they're well able to do it.
Can. Yeah.
Because we
yes.
got a lot of
Yes.
input. People had no difficulty getting hold of us one way or the other.
And we've talked about, like, oh, should we do a board Facebook page
Right.
or a blog? People can't get in touch with us. But I think we've learned people want to get in
They
touch with
want
us.
us, they know where to find
They know
us.
where to find us. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, and actually, just along those
Yes.
routes, my memory of those communications was that the board also did a good job of responding.
I think so.
You know, that Diana was, crafted thoughtful responses in multiple ways, and I think you were very responsive, and I think the board was very responsive.
Our fourth goal is kind of this very general goal about supporting the growth and improvement for teachers, staff, students, parents, and administrators. I feel like we've kind of worked all of those things into the previous goals. I think that's a constant. I don't know that we need to continue that as like its own goal. I feel like that's constant in all of the goals. Something that Peter brought up in his suggestions, and I don't know if this belongs in a goal or if it belongs in a workshop topic, but we have we are expecting kind of a challenging budget this coming year. We also have 2 union contracts to negotiate this year. We want to do that respectfully and fiscally responsibly, and might that be a goal? Should that be a goal, or should that be just? I guess that's always our goal. It's always our job is to have like a good budget and be fiscally responsible with union contracts. But it feels like, I don't know, maybe that would be a good goal this year.
Yeah, because early indicators are it's going to be a challenging budget because the tax cap is based not uniquely but in large part upon the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and right now it's barely above 0. So it's very likely that the tax cap will be smaller than we've ever seen before. And our goal, I think, whether we identify it as a goal in our board goal, but maintaining our staff is a personal goal of mine. To not be forced into a position where we have to resort to layoffs, which means building the budget is going to be challenging, and settling contracts is going to be challenging too.
What do you guys think about, we can table it for a moment just because I feel like the recommendation is always to have like 3 or 4 goals max. So I don't want to like overburden our goals, but I feel like the fiscal responsibilities of the board is a really big responsibility, and I do feel like we have a lot of challenges this year. So I'm leaning towards making that one of our goals, but we can kind of keep talking about if there's anything else and see if something gets.
Well, I had one thing. I don't know if it was a goal, or if it would be a component of one of the 3. In relation to what we were talking about with Common Core, and I would love to see some type of a district. I even put into wording because I didn't want to. Hold on a second. Like a district-wide, I guess, belief or on how we view Common Core in the sense of to address this non-testing that goes on, that people aren't taking the test. We all know when we talk about it that we don't emphasize the tests and the tests aren't used to track students and so forth. And I think we need to get that message across to the community. Because, they need to see the positives of what we get out of those tests and, I guess, dispel the myths of, the negatives of why, because ultimately it's the parents' decision, but, if you ask parents why they hold their children back, we need to hear those voices and address them to maybe get them to see that, it's not it's not such a bad thing. I'm not sitting here advocating for tests in any way, but we have to give them, so it'd be nice if the students all took them. So, and so they understand what we get out of that, that's good, and that it's not gonna be a negative, it's not gonna negatively affect them. So, some type of a belief system that the district has, to maybe put people's thoughts at ease.
Sounds like you're asking for like more context with testing, and I feel like that's something we just talked about with the
Yeah.
test scores, and maybe it can be that maybe it can also just involve that. Like if we're talking about, if we're asking the administration to give us information on the test scores and what they mean and what they don't mean, and why we do them, and why the tests are required, and what they're testing, it might get worked into that presentation, and I
Yes.
feel like that could be
Yeah,
asked
I
as
think
well.
it, I
And that
think
could
it,
be a workshop topic.
Right. Well, do you feel like it would be part of the test scores? Or is it a separate workshop topic?
Well-
I'm seeing them as the same, but I could be
No,
wrong.
and I think that when you first started, you were talking about the Common Core.
well,
And-
right.
And, I think there is so much confusion out there of what is the Common Core, what's the reform agenda, where the tests fit into it. And it's this big picture that has, through just conversation, ended up turning into kind of like one big ball. And they're very different components to it. And so maybe what we want to do is really educate parents on what the Common Core is, what the reform agenda is, and how the relationship between the Common Core and the reform agenda also relates to the tests.
Right.
And what they're, and many people who are frustrated with the Common Core, they're really not frustrated with the Common Core, they're frustrated with the reform agenda and the modifications of the testing. And I think that may be just a good conversation to have. And I think if people read the Common Core, the curriculum that came, the federal curriculum that came to the state, which then they modified, they would have a very different feeling if they understood what it actually was, and they had an opportunity to sit down and take a look at it, whether it's in reading or writing or any of the others that have come out. And then and from that, the tests came, and from that, the reform agenda was created, and the No Child Left Behind moving away, and then having the Common Core come in, and the funding that came from the federal government. It's all one big mess at this point, so maybe people need clarification.
That sounds good.
Because if you put all the parents of the students that didn't take the test in a room and asked them why did you keep your child home, I would think probably the most common answer is they don't want to stress their kid out. I don't know if you agree with that, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's only stressful on the kid if the school puts it on them. And again, I guarantee there are districts, especially like where I work in the city, where the teachers are probably saying how important this exam is, and it's so important for this, the school, the blah, 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 all this stuff. I'm sure that's not going on in our classrooms. And so if you take the stress away, the test itself shouldn't be stressful if the students don't fear that, okay, if they only completed half the exam, that, now what's going to happen to them? So I think that all needs to be addressed.
Right. And the fact that these tests are really benchmarks to make sure that they're on track to pass the Regents exams when they get into high school.
Right.
And that's the original intent, to take a look at where they are in third grade, where they are in seventh grade, et cetera, and then make sure that at least for English, the English language arts, they're going to be okay to pass the Regents when they hit junior year. And those are graduation requirements. So that's what the original intent was, and then it got mixed up into different types of things. And the cut scores changed. We're looking at graduation requirements and a race to the top and all of that. I think that would be a good topic.
God, you're just throwing out like 7 different initiatives. so
Right.
I'm trying to keep them all straight.
Right.
I think we might need the auditorium that night. I have a feeling
And
there's going to
some
be a lot of
PowerPoint
people
action.
show up.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just to give
it's-
people the understanding of what it is, and they can make their own decisions based on the understanding, but there's a lot of confusion out there.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that sounds like that's a separate workshop topic to test score analysis. Yeah.
And prior to.
And
probably.
prior to.
And prior to.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Are there any other thoughts on other goals, on the other things that we've missed? I think you had, go ahead.
believe that we have to complete and approve our 5-year facilities plan this year.
Yes.
Is that right? Is that been started yet, or is this something that? Yeah. So this is just in the sort of kickoff
Yeah, they're coming
phase.
in October 14th and 15th, the walkthrough, they'll have the paperwork in by November 15th.
So this is the architectural review of the facilities as they exist
Yes.
currently?
Yes.
So that's like the starting point for our
Well,
5 years
the
facilities
RFPs went
plan?
out. We've
Yeah.
chosen the group that's going to do the study.
Right, we saw that.
Actually,
Yeah.
when the RFP went out, this company EMG had the lowest price. However, Ann Dinio went on BOCES website, and they were also listed through BOCES at about $9,000 cheaper. So we got them through the BOCES price.
With BOCES aid.
Good. Good. So once that's done then, and we get their report,
Yeah.
then we'll have some strategizing to do over how we address any deficiencies in the facility, or what we think our future needs may be over the course of the next 5 years, and that would ultimately end up being our 5-year facilities plan, I'm guessing.
So are you thinking of putting that under fiscal responsibility as a goal, or maybe a workshop topic?
I could also see it under the strategic plan as a way of
The
looking
big
ahead.
issue under the strategic plan is
Yeah.
addressing the
Space needs, yeah.
well, yeah, the space needs to support the kinds of, authentic, in-depth learning experiences that we want to provide kids.
So it sounds like the tangible strategic plan stuff this year are the individual learning plans, the technology, and the facilities plan, because all that stuff is definitely happening this year. Is that all?
And so I actually don't think I know what the 5-year facilities plan is. I mean, I saw it was in the documents, but I
Right.
don't really know exactly
Well,
what the.
it's required, the state education department, every 5 years requires that we bring somebody in to do an independent analysis of where the district is, facilities-wise. And what they will do is they'll take a look at all the buildings, they'll take a look at the demographics, they'll take the look at the population, what we're offering, and then they make a determination for the recommendations that we have to consider in the next 5 years, in order to keep the infrastructure safe and functional for the district. And so this is the one from the state.
So but probably not just, I mean, maybe it is just safe and functional, but I don't know. I mean, is it more than just safe and functional? Is it?
It can be, it's not necessarily how attractive the district
No,
is, but
right.
it's using our space wisely.
Okay.
Making sure that we're meeting the needs of the students.
Okay.
We're not,
Yeah.
we don't have too little. We're using it as wisely as we can.
Okay.
It would be part of the equation, I would imagine,
I'm sure
with the
this is-
strategic
this, the
plan, not the
mandated piece.
only,
Right,
not the only part of the equation,
right.
but part of the equation.
So I'm sure there's the mandated piece, assuring the safety and appropriateness of the facilities. But then there's what do we as a district want to do with our facilities?
That's what I mean. It's kind of part and parcel.
Yeah.
And so when does the 5-year facilities plan, when does that happen? When is that complete? Because
Well, it'll be done this year, and then they'll give us a report at the end.
so then it sounds like in terms of addressing that would actually then become a goal for the
Sounds like it
following
might
Oh, I
be.
thought Mike had said it was,
It'll be done by November 15th to us. It has to be filed,
This-
I believe, by January 15th.
Oh, so then then it does become something, if there's.
And then that can be used as a basis to begin our discussion as far as facilities goes
Yeah.
with the strategic plan.
All right, that sounds like the timeline. So
Right.
the coming 4 months are sort of prescribed, but then what we do with the report, once
Right.
we receive it back, that's our project.
it
Okay.
is also part of the budget, too. I mean, I guess it will be getting it in a timeline pre-budget so that we can talk about that as part of it as well.
Right. And Mike
Kind of crossing goals, that one.
Mike Twardy actually created last year with all the facilities department kind of our own individual internal 5-year plan and looked at some of the things that we need to consider over the next 5 years. So that could be part of it. The one from the state education department could be part of it, and then we can decide where we're going.
Okay, good. Any other topics to include in goals that we have yet to address? Okay, so just a little review, make sure I understand, and then what I'll do, and maybe I'll just write up like a draft and let you guys see it, and we can hash it out, make sure everything's in there. But the first goal is about supporting the administrative restructuring, keeping tabs on all those changes, making sure that we have enough information to make a good decision about moving forward with the 2 principals and the PPS director and all that good stuff. The second goal is supporting the implementation of the strategic plan, and that's specifically with the technology progress and the individual learning plans and the facilities plan, keeping tabs on those progress reports, making sure that there is qualitative and quantitative assessment of all of those things, making sure we're on the right path. The third goal is creating an open channel of communication with the public. Website, this is the year the website is getting updated. Did everyone hear Peter say it? He said it twice.
And there they are, in the audience.
Peter's like, come hell or hell wide. I'll do it myself. So website, more board doc communication, community leaders group, involving the student representatives, finding ways to just keep that channel open. And then the fourth goal is fiscal responsibilities for the year, our budget, our union contracts. Is that kind of the scheme, the scope?
Can I add one more detail about
Yeah.
the communication?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you would have done this, but involving the student representative in an effort to make sure that we're really hearing from that students' voices become an important. I mean, I know that's the intention, but making sure that, because I think sometimes in our effort to make sure that we're getting valuable information from the student representatives, I think we've kind of at times maybe focused on charging them with X, Y, and Z, to make sure let them know we want to hear about this or want to hear about that. And I think that's appropriate given that they are young people, to scaffold the opportunities for them to provide information to us, but really making it clear that we're tasking them with these efforts and asking them these questions, because as students, that's I don't know, constituents, not the word I want, but they are stakeholders from whom it is really important that we hear.
We're not giving them another homework assignment.
It's not a homework assignment.
doing it 'cause we wanna
It
hear
is. It's realizing that that's a really important piece.
Part of the equation. Yep. Good.
And when they come to us, we're not seeking their individual personal opinions.
No.
So this requires some, we need to hear back from them. Are they willing to take on this responsibility?
not be something that they
do they
can
want
do.
Do they want to do this?
Right. It
Because
might-
it
it might
is
be.
going to require the representatives to engage with the rest of the student body and do some
And not just
formal
their
or
friends, but-
informal polling of
Yeah.
the student body. But I mean, what we're saying is, we would love to hear from them. And if they would love to talk to us, then, then we might be able to get something going.
Yeah, but I think Peter's exactly right. I mean, and it is tasking them with a not insignificant undertaking, but really making sure that we are, that the voices of a representative group of students are who we're hearing from.
Good. Thank you.
So obviously, we're going to need, the input from our administrators. Is this realistic? Is this a good direction for us to move in? And if so, what steps would we need to take
that makes
to make that
sense.
happen?
Right.
Okay, good.
And I was just wondering
Go
if, before we move on, if we should just ask if there's anybody who's with us this evening who thinks that we're missing something. Is there a
In terms
goal
of
that
our
that they think the Board of Education should have that we haven't talked about yet today?
Okay, let's open it up. Yeah.
I just have a question more than anything. The branding topic and concept that we talked about at the strategic plan, we kind of put off a little bit, and I was wondering if that was something that would be joined in with like the communication, the website. Like, was that something that was still in discussion, or is that something that post-strategic plan is gonna kind of be put on hold?
I think what we found was that we made it a goal last year to focus on the rebranding, and rebranding is a tricky word because people hear branding and they think marketing, and that's not all it is. It's about like who are we? What's our vision? What's our mission? And how do we communicate it to ourselves, to each other, to prospective students, to the community? And what we realized was until we have the strategic plan in place, we were going too ahead too quickly. So I feel like that goal got put on the back burner a little bit so we could really talk about the strategic plan and where do we want to be and who do we want to be, and then let's make that, that message clear. So I think that that's something that was going to continue to get developed throughout the year as we're talking about the strategic plan and how to implement it. I feel like that's kind of a developing topic. I think that it will be communicated on our new website, but and also amongst us as board members, but I think that it's a developing topic. Am I communicating that?
And I think part of that was telling the Haldane story. So I think that was really the focal point, and then the next conversation was, well, maybe we should have a brand. And so part of the communication piece is telling the Haldane story. And when we look at the new website and maybe some social networking kind of things that we want to consider and all of that, that will all be part of it. But we may not tell the story through a brand, we may tell the story through who we are and our communication. So I think that's, as I remember, that's kind of where we left it.
But that also kind of gets in a sense to the idea of different, I don't want to, actually I want to open it up to more people who have questions, but the way of gathering evidence about what's happening in the school in the different ways, to the extent that it took different forms. You mentioned something along the video. I think the extent to which the school does communicate in multifaceted ways about what's happening. I think that's part of telling this story, which is telling the story, whatever it is, making really clear who we are, which is part of that, I think, that communication piece.
I don't know if that answered your question, Julia. Yeah. It's still a question, I guess, is the answer to your question. We're still working on it.
We have a question in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, just quick. When you establish your goals for the year,
Microphone? Can you please come to the microphone?
please come out, that's all.
It's for the public, it's not for us. It's for the public.
So they can hear your question.
She didn't stand up.
Because I was loud enough.
Oh, yes.
Right here.
I'm sure you are. When you establish your goals for the year, at what point and how do you come up with the metrics or measures to say, at the end of the year, we're good? That's my question.
Yeah, like how do we assess ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this year we assessed ourselves kind of informally, without like a specific rubric. We just kind of went through it and talked about it, and Dr. Bowers keeps us honest and said, oh, well, yeah, or, oh, yeah, you guys are really good at that. So we do have an objective person that's usually with us. But I think what we've been talking about is trying to create tangible ways to measure these goals throughout the year, and by being really clear in our goals so that they're not these like overarching concepts, but it's, we want to know what's happening with the facilities plan. We want to know what's happening with the individual learning plans. We want to know what's happening with the board docs communication. How many times have the community leaders group met? I feel like we're weaving in some very tangible ways to determine if we're on task with it.
So
When you were talking, it just made me think, so one of the things where I'm always emphasizing at my organization is that when you supervise your employees, it shouldn't happen once a year. It needs to happen multiple times throughout the year. Like if you wait until everybody's annual performance review, you've waited too long. So I think we need to think about how to do that. Like there's
Just
Take
keeping it not on the shelf.
well, yeah,
keeping
but
it
and
and, like,
maybe having a
seeing it as
specific
we go.
plan for is it December? Is it before budget season that we take it? We stop and look at it and invite the public to weigh in
Assess
as to whether or not it would be an because one of the things I think we've learned is we do need to do this as part of in an open meeting. And so I think to articulate for the record and for ourselves
Yeah.
the evidence that we think where we have and where we
Where we're
haven't,
going.
as well as getting external feedback.
Maybe sometime like January, February would be a good kind of marker
Yeah, right in
of
the-
time.
And we did a mid-year retreat last year, and
Right.
we'll be doing something similar this year.
Right. But is it that it's the whole retreat versus, I think, versus what I heard in the question was some sort of more, not just private accountability, but public accountability and figuring out how we want to do that, so.
And the workshop topics will help that, because this is our time to look at what we have in the goals, present something through the year that can give you an update of where we are. And so we have a number of topics at this point, but we'll have to decide on if there are additional ones based on the goals.
So some sort of goal assessment check-in sometime midway through, and also just kind of keeping it part of our dialogue of how are we doing along the way. And then at the end of the year, we'll do one too.
Right. And now that you're going to be setting your goals, now I can also set mine, because my goals come from what the focus is for the year from you, and then there'll be measurable ways of assessing that as well.
Does that answer your question? Cool. Are there any other questions or any goals that anybody's feeling like we've totally missed? So we only have a couple minutes left on our tape here, but I want to organize our workshop topics. So I'm feeling like we might run out of the tape and just be okay with that. Is that okay? Okay, so we talked about, so right now today's workshop is the new tech network. We're getting an update on that. The next workshop, we talked about doing earlier start time conversation, presentation, etc. Part of that is because we need to decide on it before budget season, right? It's going to be part of that equation, so we really need to make a decision about that. Oh yeah, you have that listed. So in October, we're discussing the earlier start time, and we're trying to make a decision about it by December.
Right.
Other workshop topics that have been thrown out there are strategic plan progress report, student, oh wait, that's part of that. A test score, analysis, of, obviously that should be somewhere surrounding tests, timing wise.
And I have that as Common Core State Test Reform Agenda, Race to the Top.
Oh, I have these as two separate ones.
okay.
That the test score analysis would happen after, like as a secondary workshop topic, and before that we would do the
Okay.
several initiatives.
I mean,
Unless you think it should go
Perhaps
together.
as you think about how you might construct this workshop, it may be
Makes sense.
more appropriate to just bundle it all in one, or it may be better to keep it as two separate things.
Well, I see it so closely linked with all the other ones, I think it's difficult to have it just as a standalone.
Okay. Great. Other things that have been tossed out there is a presentation on the APPR and what that all means. And we might not know
Realizing-
until
Yeah, because we're
later
still,
what that means.
well, we are in the process of renegotiating, and with the teachers, we're also going to have to look and have a conversation about how that will look with the principals. So they are giving us opportunities of asking for extensions. Right now, it could potentially be beyond this year. So this is,
November 15th.
Well, November 15th is when we have to have it in place if we haven't been granted an extension. And then you can have your first extension. Now they're looking at a second extension. So
But maybe if we had it on the date, if we had like late spring, it would be either the new APPR or it would be
The old
the
APPR.
existing one that's
Yep.
currently in
We can
place.
do it
So
that way.
either way, we're gonna have an APPR in the
Okay.
spring.
Yep.
So whatever the one is at the time, and even if it's gonna change, like if we say, okay, this is the one, well, we got an extension, so next year's gonna change, we still should understand what it is now, so this way next year we'll understand what the change was.
Agreed. Other topics we've thrown out there is some sort of discussion about our coalition that cares, community that cares coalition, the drug prevention programs that we've put out there, what's going on in that,
and partnerships with
Arena.
Putnam County.
right?
So this is kind of an informational workshop so that we as a board and also the public understand, you know, what's the school doing in this area.
The multiple efforts that I think are taking place at different levels to make sure we know about them.
We also talked about the possibility of doing before and or after school care at some point.
Oh, yes, I heard about that.
That
this
might
week.
be, oh, did you? Like, I want it.
Sorta.
That might be part of a earlier start time conversation as well. Like
Yes,
that might
that
need
would
to
be part
be
of it.
necessitated.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's part of that conversation or if it's like its own separate topic. But we might want to explore that a little bit. And is it beneficial? And what are the problems with it? And
Well, there is an organization that is running before and after school care in many of the surrounding districts, and it's running within 4 or 5 of our component districts and our BOCES. It's also running across the river and to the north of us. So maybe we should have a conversation about the start times and whether or not we're looking for before and after school care, and then we could have the group come in and present, if that's the direction we want to go.
yeah, and I don't know if it's. I think that a start time a change in start times might necessitate that conversation. But I think even without the start time change, that conversation is probably still very viable.
You say this, so we start the discussion October 20th. I mean, once we start the discussion, I mean, so you know how this works. We're gonna get a lot of emails, and it's gonna be a lot of updates basically every board meeting where we are. We're getting a lot of input. So my point is, on the 15th, if that's the decision, is that really a workshop topic? Because we're gonna make a decision that day. It's not like we need a presentation and then we're gonna make we would have had the presentation, we would have had the correspondence. So we'd basically be walking into that meeting on the 15th knowing
Right,
what
I hear
we-
what you're
what-
saying.
what we-
There
how we're
might
gonna
be,
vote,
there
so-
might need to be other discussion or presentation, but it wouldn't be necessarily its own workshop
It's-
topic.
Right, that's
it's
what
an
I'm getting
agenda
at.
topic.
It's an agenda.
But it's not a workshop.
That's what I'm
Right.
getting at, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's listed here, but I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
So do you want to add the presentation for before and after school care into that one?
Yeah, I mean, that might even be on the 17th. It might even need to be back to back if we're talking about start times on the 20th. And if we're talking about start times in October, we might need to talk about before and after school in November, just so we have the whole picture of what's possible. And then in December is our decision.
Okay.
Well, I
But
think
that's
it'd be
not
better,
necessarily
depending
a
on the
workshop.
decision, especially if the decision is to start later, that presentation would probably be better in January, because then you're definitely gonna have a lot more people that might be interested. Like, you know what I'm saying, like, early care.
I think that in order to get, if we decide we wanted to do, I think
Yeah.
that people's thoughts in their heads of like, oh, is that a good idea or not, is if it's possible for them in their personal schedule.
Sure.
So I think adding in the conversation before we make our decision is probably important,
Yeah.
so that we can hear
Okay.
from people and
Right, yeah, yeah,
The extent to
okay.
which we can support that happening for family, like recognizing
what can we
school
do.
as like a school-family partnership, how, if we're gonna
Right.
change the school policy, how can we support
Support the family.
families?
Right. What else is on the workshop topic list? You had a couple more, Peter.
Yeah, I did have a couple more. One is our energy performance contract, which we're in year 2 or 3 of, where the vendor guaranteed us certain energy savings, and we have to monitor our energy use within the campus to ensure that we're getting the promised savings. So, we can look at multi-year data, before we did the energy performance contract and after. We'd also, this was before my time on the board, but I believe there's a third party that's going to be looking at that data and assuring us that yes, indeed, it's valid. The multi-energy use analysis, third-party monitoring, and once our solar generation system is online, it'd be great to look at, tell the public what it is, what kind of performance we're getting from the system. We're anticipating it's going to generate 60% of our annual electric usage. So, and there'll be remote monitoring, so you can go to a website and see the real time. So I think there's a lot of interesting
Like a
material.
Solar energy
Yeah.
performance contract update.
Yep.
Maybe in the spring sometime. That one's not super time sensitive.
No. And then something related to technology, because we're going into year 3 of the high school iPad program. So I think we'd like to hear, is it successful? Is it helping students with their education? How's it? It's just a progress report on how that program is going.
And I think we should also include in that the Smart Schools Bond Act, because we have
Yep.
to have that
Right.
information.
Yes.
And we're having our first technology meeting quickly this year, because we have to start getting an understanding of what we're going to be using that money for.
Yeah, and I would also throw in the Google Classroom, Google Apps for Education, since this seems to be the direction that the
Yep.
district is considering moving in. What is it? What do these applications do? What's our relationship with Google? Data privacy issues, what are they? Are there any? What should people be aware of?
And we're getting a kind of a first progress report tonight, but it might be almost like a follow-up,
Right.
Leah to that.
Simon, when they get up and perform for us and present some information in your dance.
With your tap shoes?
It's an interpretive dance.
Everybody's got their tap shoes on?
They also went to the Google Summit this year, and so they can share what they learned there. Now that you have your brace off.
Okay, any other workshop topics to throw out there?
Well, there's a little one that we've talked about having with the TRS pension smoothing option. What's our exit plan?
Right.
What's the impact on the current and future budgets by exiting now?
But we need to get that moving soon, because Anne said we need to make a decision, or she would like us to make a decision on that before the auditors leave.
Well, that was for the reserves, that we need the sort of October decision for how we're
Right.
going to fund the reserves. But actually, the withdrawing from the pension smoothing plan, I think we have until June.
Oh, I
So I
thought she
think we
wanted
have
to
some
get
time
that
on
done
that.
in
Well, she would-
October.
She'd like
She
to
would
know
like to
what
do
we,
it,
what we're going
yes,
to do, but when we
yes.
actually, so.
So whether you're talking about the drop dead date or the time, how she would like to have it roll out, I think that while the audits are going through, she'd like to have an idea and a direction as soon as she can.
Well,
That's
then
more
wouldn't
of
it
a
make,
topic for a budget meeting, I would think, and then instead of a workshop topic, just a topic for a budget meeting.
Well, I think we're looking to get a quick decision on this. That's what I'm hearing. That,
Right, so, but I'm just saying, no,
Can we just add it to?
just make it a
The
topic. I mean,
agenda?
it sounds like more of a budget meeting topic than a workshop topic.
Yeah, but
It
she would
does,
like to have the decision. It doesn't require board action, it just requires your comfort. And so
do you feel
I
like
think
maybe
she
we
wants to try to get it done quickly.
Put on the
But
next
could we
budget
just-
meeting agenda.
right, but I think she actually wants us to talk about it next business meeting and
Yeah.
give it some sort of approval.
I think
or-
it's a very short, it's like a 10-minute item, I think,
So
really.
we
Yeah.
just add it to the agenda.
Yeah,
think we should
that's
add
all
it
I'm
to
saying.
the-
I'm just
the
saying,
agenda.
yeah.
We'll just add it to the agenda for the business meeting,
Yeah.
and we'll have a little presentation.
Yeah, that, Julia,
And then take action.
the next, yep.
Right. Okay, I feel like that's a lot of workshop topics. maybe what Diana and I can do is just go through all of them and try to place them on like a calendar and then give it out to you guys to see if it sounds like it makes sense.